Hello and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Hype. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP and Executive Editor-at-Large for Black Enterprise, and this edition of Beyond the Hype is brought to you by JP Morgan Chase. This is a powerful conversation I've been looking forward to for a long time. Our guest today is someone that I met because we both have crossed paths by providing advice and insights into how to execute diversity in this quote-unquote new age of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. And I just became fascinated with her. I knew about reputation as a speaker, as an author, as a resilience coach, as a person of faith, which I am as well. But in our meetings, she really, and as you get to know her, you'll understand, she really hit on an area of diversity that is an afterthought if it's brought up at all, not just in corporate America, but in society as well. So I just want to welcome to the show, Dr. Chantrise Sims-Holliman. Welcome to the show.
I am excited to be here. I am excited to have this conversation. I told everybody today I have to get home. I've got something important to do. So I'm excited. I'm
so glad you're here. I really want the Beyond the Hype audience to get to know who you are in a broader sense. I always tell people I was somebody before I came to Black Enterprise.
Right.
You obviously were somebody since God created you before the womb. So
right.
Just talk a little bit about who you are and what you do beyond our topic for today's show.
Okay. What I do, actually, let me back up. I tell people that I'm an educator by both vocation and profession. So if you understand the difference, my profession is that I am an educator, specifically grades 6 through 12, English. It was an English major, but I'm also an educator by vocation, which means I'm also called to educate people. I'm originally from Newton, Massachusetts. Fun fact for you, Fig Newtons are named after my hometown. Literally, that's where the term Fig Newtons comes from. I am the only child of two amazingly brilliant individuals. My father, John, actually comes from the business industry. Before we came on air, I mentioned that the picture in the background was one of the people that my father admires in business. He is actually one of the handful of Black men that graduated from Harvard Business School in the 70s. My mother, Phyllis, is big, or was, because she's retired and very happily so, might I add, in the healthcare field. And so I was raised by two very intelligent, brilliant individuals, and that kind of trickled down to me. I am also an author. I am a public speaker. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a first lady of a church. And I am also, and I was all of those things prior to the reason why we are having this discussion today. But in 2018, I added another intersection to my intersectionality. So Black, female, and in 2018, I added disabled to my list of things or labels, I suppose we could call it, when I survived a widowmaker heart attack. And complications resulted in me becoming partially paralyzed from the waist down and a bilateral lower limb amputee. So I went from being a DSW devotee and someone who ran half marathons. I was actually training for the Peachtree Road Race here in Atlanta when I had my heart attack. And the interesting thing about that is that I didn't have a heart attack because I was unhealthy. I had the heart attack because I had one blocked artery. And my cardiologist told me that the reason why I did not die was because I was so healthy. So we'll talk about the goodness of God in another conversation about that. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
No, I identify with what your doctor told you. I'm now, as of this month, well, actually last month, 11 years from successful prostate cancer surgery.
Okay.
Never got sick. Never got sick. They just caught it so early that they caught it when I was asymptomatic. So, but he said the same thing, is like, you didn't get it because you're unhealthy, because of anything, but he said, but you survived it as well as you did because you are healthy.
Yep.
And I think that just my own personal feeling is that we have to emphasize that part of why you want to be healthy.
Right.
Not so much that you'll never get sick or you'll never
Right.
get weird, but how do you? It's about resilience. You know,
It's about resilience.
resilient. And while
Right.
God didn't design our bodies to last forever, He did design it to be resilient if we care
Right.
for it properly. Yeah, so
Yep.
absolutely identify with that. And here, before we talk about our core conversation, I really do want to, establish. I don't want to say you bona fides, you are who you are, but this whole idea of resilience.
Uh-huh.
I would imagine that in all of the roles that you just laid out,
Right.
not just your current experience,
Right.
you had to, you don't just talk about it, you lived it. You had to be resilient in all of those roles, even prior to the heart attack, and now being part of the quote unquote disabled community.
Oh yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. So, let me sort of back up. Growing up in Newton, Massachusetts, meant that I learned how to be resilient at a really young age, because if you know anything about Newton, Massachusetts, it's actually every year it's almost voted the safest city in the country. Like nothing ever happens, and when something happens in Newton, it's a big deal. So that also means that I often tell people, the only chocolate chip in the cookie dough, or one of a very few. So I grew up as an only, not just an only child, but as an only Black student in a predominantly white Jewish neighborhood. So I learned very early what it meant to be young, gifted, and Black, and how that was perceived by the larger population in my neighborhood and in my school. So resilience is something that I'm not unfamiliar with. It is how I've learned to live my life. I learned that from my parents, who were children of the 50s and the 60s, watching them and learning a lot about, the civil rights movement and the struggles that my parents had, in order to live where they live and do what they've done. So resilience is a part of, very much a part of who I am. But I want to say this about resilience, because there's this meme that's going around. And on the one hand, I agree with it, but I believe one of the reasons why I'm still here is because I want to change the narrative around what it means to be resilient. So most of the time when we think of resilience, we think about it's our ability to get knocked down and get back up. And there's a meme that's going around that says, I don't care if I don't want to be called resilient another day in my life, especially as a Black woman. I want to be, held, and I want to be soft, and I don't want to be lauded for how well I get knocked down and get back up. So I believe that, and I learned this from a professor of mine, that resilience isn't just the ability to get knocked down and get back up. Resilience is the ability to survive so that you can thrive. And it's that thrive piece that is important. I'm not resilient because I just like the old Timex commercials. I like to take a licking and keep on ticking. I'm resilient because I have a life to live. I'm resilient because I have thriving that I have left to do. So if being resilient means that I get to live until I'm 70, 80, 90, I get to live the life that I want, then I want to be resilient. And I think that there are lots of things that go into being resilient. The biggest one for me is self-care. If you don't take care of yourself, then you can't be resilient. That's just the bottom line. If you don't know how to put we hear it all the time. If you don't know how to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, you can't help yourself or anybody else. So yeah, resilience is a.
I so share your view every time I see that. I knew exactly meme you were going to be talking about before you said it, because I've been seeing it, and I'm always like, I can't see resilience as anything other than a strength. And I have what one of my mentors labeled me, and I accepted. I have Superman complex. And one time she was telling me, just because Superman can take a bullet doesn't mean he doesn't recognize it as a hostile act.
Right.
So
right.
Resilience isn't just about taking punishment for the sake of taking punishment.
Yep.
Resilience is your ability to overcome adversity and not only thrive, but to serve others. In other words, what makes Superman a hero is that he didn't just sit there and take bullets. He's resilient it is a bit for his ability to help make life better in general, not just a
Right.
punishment. So I get
Right.
it. Black women in particular, are lauded for being super and look how much punishment they can take. And yeah, I get it. On the other hand, I'm preaching to obviously to the choir here. Actually, you're preaching. I'm the choir. You're doing the preaching. That yes, resilience is a good thing. And I do. I have 3 daughters. I have a son. I have my first grandson. And one of the things that I tried very hard to do as a parent was to build a certain amount of resilience into them, because you know what they're going to face, but you want them to enjoy life, not just endure life. But you can't
yes,
enjoy
I
life
like that.
Resilient.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Enjoy life, not just endure. I'm gonna have to borrow that.
I have my moments. I have my moments. So let's get to again what made me very excited about. I got to get Dr. Chantrise onto this show. I got to get her on this show, because every time we would have this meeting, and again, I'm not going to mention the name of this particular company that you and I both provide advice to. And let me laud, because they'll know who they are when they hear it, that they even have this particular advisor, that they pulled this together, saying something positive about the company. So it's not shade on what they're doing, and it became a pattern, because the first time you kind of pulled the coattail, I'm like, oh, that was a good thing, and now somebody's gonna. Well, you've had to pull the coattail, and this particular coattail to our audience. We will have these great in-depth meetings about how do we do a better job, and how do we integrate diversity, equity, inclusion into the culture of our company, and what we do and how we do it. A conversation that companies throughout corporate America are having right now. And inevitably, we'll go through all the different lenses of what diversity is about. We'll go through race, we'll go through ethnicity, we'll go through national origin, we'll go through sexual orientation, we'll go through gender. Like we'll go through the whole, rainbow coalition of
the gamut, run the gamut. Yes.
Inevitably, guys, Dr. Chantrise will say, listen, you're talking about me being a Black woman, you're talking about me being a person, you're talking about how many times I got to tell you guys that you are not, and if you're not having that conversation in this meeting about where do you deal with belonging among disabled people in your company, and we're talking about the visibly and invisibly disabled. But if you can't really get people to pay attention to the visibly disabled, God help those who are invisibly disabled. Right. So just talk to me about how, first of all, speaking of resilience, never let them off the hook.
No, and
every meeting you're like, nah. Hotel again.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because, so like I said, I lived 45 years of my life, as a person without a disability. Okay. And I often tell people that things don't affect you until they affect you, right? So not that I was, in any way, I always try to be, empathetic and sympathetic and compassionate to whoever I come across. But issues that occur with people with disabilities didn't affect me until I became a person with a disability. So what that means is that it became my lived experience, right? So when I, for example, when I go to the mall, right? When I go to the mall, I become very hyper focused and aware on the number of parking spots that are available for people that have disabilities, and the folk who park there because they have a nice car, not because they actually, need to be parking there. So I figure that I have this voice, that part of the reason that maybe that I'm here still is because I need to bring awareness to things. And when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, like you said, we've got all the bases covered, except for disability. And a lot of times it is an afterthought. In the advisory group that we are in, and I don't know if I said this, and I might have, because I might have been in a mood that day, but that if you're not having these conversations here, then I know you're not having them in the greater corporation. And I know you're not having them because you don't have anybody with a physical disability that's in your corporate structure, that's somewhere working within your corporation. It reminds me a lot of the times when the 60s and 70s when, we were having this conversation around Black people in corporate America. And, you would have corporations, bring this, and there's nothing wrong with, my light-skinned brothers and sisters, but they would bring in somebody who was light enough to pass and say, no, see, we have somebody right here. See, they're Black. And she's a woman, but they don't say, well, she's the secretary, or, her job is to, go get coffee. So I think in a lot of ways when people say, oh, we've got people with disabilities at our company, such and such a person, has ADHD, or such and such a person, has lupus, which I also have. And this is not to take away from anybody that has an invisible disability. That's not the, it's very easy, however, to claim equity and inclusion when you don't see the disability on the person. How many, and I use this because I'm an educator, and I use this as an example. And I ask people, I want you to think, if you have kids who are in school, or if you were, in school, how many administrators did you have, or do you know of, that have physical disabilities? And I'm not going to let you think long, because I personally don't know of any. Okay.
I don't either.
And that's the problem. The problem is that we are really hyper focused on equity and yeah, we've got the diversity going on, but there is nobody on your staff. There's nobody in a leadership position. There's nobody, who has a physical disability within the organization. And so I just feel like, it's my job to make people aware that needs to be, that is a part when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Having a disability is a part of that.
And it's even deeper, because first of all, again, I want to make it sound like, yes, I was on top of this, and no, you pricked my own conscience in terms of how I think about it. And I have friends who have physical disabilities. I have at least one family member. So like, part of me was like, wait, why am I not thinking like this? Why did I have to get into this group and hear from Dr. Chantrise before I started thinking, why don't I have a more visceral response when I see somebody who's clearly not handicapped parked in a handicapped spot? Why do I think that a business or a company has basically done this job if there's a real wheelchair accessible ramp? Oh, they did it. Okay, that's nice. And in the restroom, there's the bar on the wall. And I think that's really where it goes. Yep. But when I look at the standard that you talk about, both in our meetings and beyond, and I've noticed another meme that you posted or reposted on your Instagram between the last couple of days. Let me put it this way. At Black Enterprise, when we think who's doing their job on diversity with Black people, we're not looking at how many Black people are in the ads.
Right.
We're not looking at, who's the spokesperson for your commercial. We're looking at four things. Black people in senior management, Black people with contracts doing business with the company or supply diversity, representation in the overall workforce, and there's a fourth one, supply diversity. Board corporate boards. That those are the four measures of whether a company is really serious about diversity or not. Because all the other stuff is nice, it's not bad, representative, performative. We'll take it, but it doesn't mean anything in the long run. It doesn't move the needle. And so when you raise that point of the reason why you guys don't think about it is because there's nobody on your board who is a physical disability. There's I don't see you going out of your way to do business with companies that may be led by disabled founders and leaders.
Right.
And I certainly don't see people in senior management and corporate senior management. You're right. If that is not part of the DNA, I don't care what level of diversity, whether it's physically disabled people, Black people, gay people, those are the four measures you got to look at before you can say this company is really trying to move the needle on diversity and representation in a way that changes the culture, because that's what you're talking about. You're not talking about this having about somebody physically using a wheelchair and visible in the company, whether they're inside the workforce or on their marketing. You're talking about somebody who can ask those questions in the day-to-day life of the company, not just in this particular meeting of outside advisors where one person rings that bell.
Yep. That is it. Spot on. And I think you're referring to the post I made on Instagram today that I got from a friend of mine named Donna Walton. She's the CEO of an organization called Divas with Disabilities, which is
because of you, by the way.
Yes. And so, she made this post that said, as people with disabilities, we don't want to hear, oh, I'm inspired by you, or you motivate me. What we want to hear is congratulations on the new job. We want to promote you. Here's this pay raise. Because one of the things that I don't talk about as often as I should is the fact that my name is Dr. Chantrise Sims-Holliman. Okay, so I have a doctoral degree. It's in education. I have a master's degree in education. I have a BA in English. I am highly qualified to do a host of things. Right. From when 2018, when I got sick, it took me until this year to find somebody who would hire me full time. When I would interview and people would see that I had a physical disability, regardless of what my CV said, regardless of the awards that I've won, regardless of the fact that you can Google me and I come up and you can see what I've done, finding a full-time job was taxing. I couldn't find. So I became an entrepreneur by default, because I had to do something in order to bring in income for myself. And that's the other thing that we don't talk about. I actually pulled up a couple of statistics just today that based on the most recent data, 17.9% of people with disabilities are employed. 17.9%. Now, if you look at people who don't have disabilities, it's somewhere around 62%. Okay. Now, if you want to just, and that's just, overall people with disabilities. Now, if you want to throw in Black women who have disabilities, that number of employed goes down. And when you start thinking about where people with disabilities are employed, they're usually in the service industry. Part of the reason why I couldn't get hired was because I was overqualified. You can't have somebody with a doctorate degree. And I was just looking for a job. I said, let me just find a job. One of the reasons why they wouldn't hire me was because if they did not see me, they saw my resume. So we're not getting ready to hire her, because as soon as she finds something better, she's going to leave. So what do you do when you are degreed and you have experience and you have all of these things, but you're also disabled and no one will hire you?
You make another point. It's kind of a tangential to this conversation, but I think it's a point worth making. We, and I'm including Black Enterprise, we just had our Big Sisters Inc. Summit focusing on Black women entrepreneurs, make a huge deal, and rightfully so, on the fact that Black women entrepreneurs are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
What we don't talk about enough is that one of the reasons that is that the more, the fewer opportunities and more resistance you have to advancing in corporate America, the more likely you're going to pursue entrepreneurship out of necessity as well as out of desire. That there's a direct correlation to how far you think you can go in a corporate environment and your likelihood of saying, you know what, forget this, I'm going to start my own business. Or worse, in your case, when you can't find a job that is commensurate with your skills, your background, your education, then you're like, well, I gotta
do something.
I guess I gotta start this whole thing and do something.
And I tell people all the time, I said, I was definitely the reluctant entrepreneur. Now, on the one hand, I liked COVID was a beautiful thing for me because I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to, I'm an introvert by nature. But what I got used to was being in control of my own time. So even though I was looking for a job because, needed to have benefits, needed to bring income in, I kind of was like, I like the fact that if it's a Monday and I don't feel like, doing anything, then, I can not do anything on a Monday. But entrepreneurship is hard work. It's hard and it's stressful. And when you're used to getting that paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, when you're used to being able to go to the doctor whenever you want to, go get your teeth cleaned whenever you want to, you on the one hand, you know, that you like the joy of the flexibility of entrepreneurship, but the reality of entrepreneurship is that it's hard. And, you know, in your first 3, 5, however many years, you're not going to make what it is that you, what you were making, you know, on the job. So,
especially take into account the value of benefits, which a lot of people
right.
realize until they're like, wait. It wasn't just the paycheck. It was this
Right.
whole other thing that I didn't have to worry about direct. We were paying for it because it comes, but
Right.
it wasn't the same thing. It wasn't the same.
And when I got sick, I didn't realize the significance of having good health insurance until I was sick, and until I spent 1, 2, 3 months in the hospital. When the bill came, my bill for the time that I spent was in the mid 6 figures. And I think we only had to come out of pocket maybe a couple of $1,000s because of the type of health insurance. If I did not have the type of health insurance that I had, we'd have been drowning in debt. We just there would be no way that we would be able to come out of that. So
most bankruptcies are due to medical.
Yeah.
You know, people. It's not people abusing credit cards or, you know, the things.
Right.
It's because you're either uninsured or underinsured, and
Yep.
you have a major experience. And let's face it, if you get past the age of 40, you're probably going to have at least one major
Right.
medical or health thing. It's just the odds. And I share some of your experiences because before the pandemic, I worked out a relationship where I'm still a permanent employee of Black Enterprise. But I stepped back from day-to-day operations and stayed more at the strategic level. That's when I stepped down from being chief content officer. And like you, so even before the pandemic, there were days of the week where, like, if I don't feel like going into Manhattan, I don't go into Manhattan. If I don't feel like, if I want to start my day at 11 o'clock and not 8 o'clock, I start my day. So I gotten used to that. And then during the pandemic, I was like, bet.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I don't have to go anywhere. Oh, this is fantastic. Okay.
I'm with it. But I don't know what I would do, again, because I am still I make a lot of my living outside of Black Enterprise.
Right.
But there's nothing like knowing that check is going to be there.
Hello.
Nothing like knowing I got a 401k plan.
Yeah.
Like knowing I still got health coverage. And so you said nothing but the word. For real. And it's something that, but my larger point is that while, yes, you're successful in what you're doing as an author, as a speaker, as a coach, and all the things that you're doing, it still needs to be said that a lot of it's out of necessity because of the barriers you face, not only as a Black person, not only as a Black woman, but as a physically disabled person who, like you said, on paper, on your resume and your experiences, should have no problem getting a job. You should be pushing people away. And that's why I think it's important. This conversation is important, not for us to look at corporate America and say, see, you guys should be doing a better job. This is a way, it's about how physically disabled people are perceived in larger society, so that we don't just come to you and say, oh, Dr. Chantrise, you're so inspiring to us, but the way you are, no, it should be, and by the way, I got this job opportunity, I need somebody to run the department, and they should feel less likely to have that conversation with you because you're just physically disabled.
Exactly. Yep, that's it.
I hope that this conversation, and I want you, I'm part of you see I'm part of your, I'm a disciple now, whatever. but I want to amplify your voice in this area because this is a lot bigger than a conversation in a meeting with one company.
Right.
The larger issues of what we perceive as real diversity, equity, and inclusion at every level of society, and in this case, in corporate America. So why aren't there any physically disabled people on corporate boards? The same way that at Black Enterprise, we're looking at that for Black people. You're asking that question, but somebody needs to be asking that question.
Right. And it's interesting because I was raised, again, my father was very keen on making sure that I understood how to navigate, my mother and father, how to navigate these waters as a Black woman. And when I became disabled, it was almost like my parents, just in their day-to-day lives and the places where they have influence, they're now bringing the idea of, bringing people with disabilities into corporate boards. So my father is one of the people so this whole consultant thing, it's in our DNA. So he consults with a couple of major museums and corporations. And one of the things that he is now saying, this is good, but what about the accessibility piece? What about who looks like my daughter that's on the board? Have you considered this person? And I think in a lot of ways it's going to start with people who either have the experience or have someone close to them that has the experience, the lived experience, who are already have seats at the table to say, hey, we need to make a place, at this table for X, Y, and Z. We need people who are already in the arena to open the doors, to act as what my father calls sponsors. I need you to open up this door and say, hey, have you thought about, this person, and getting her perspective or his perspective, and to see the person and the experience before the disability. Because I think a lot of times people lead with the disability and they think, oh, and I will joke with people and say, yeah, if you hire me, you get to check all kinds of boxes. You get to check the gender box, the race box, the ability box. You got all those boxes you can check if you hire me. And I'm joking, but you get to check all of the boxes and get somebody who is educated and qualified to do the job.
Right. So it's joking, but it's true.
But it's true.
It's true. And it's that truth that we got to leverage,
mm-hmm.
and your willingness and your ability to speak that truth in a way that makes people sit up and sit back and to start clutching their pearls.
Well, and part of that also is that fact that I'm about to turn 50. I turn 50 next year. And I tell people, I said that the closer I get to 50, the less I care about whether you're uncomfortable with me and my reality and me calling you out on yours. Something about
being past 50.
Something about aging that's just like, I've spent the first 50 years of my life trying to please y'all. No, let me go ahead and bring this real to you. Let me go ahead and bring this real to you. Let's make some changes. And if I have to be the person to, make you clutch your pearls.
And at least nobody ever told you. Because before it's like, oh, nobody ever said that to me. Well, I'm saying it to you.
I'm saying to you now. Yep.
Talk to me, because I really do want to get into the heads of people like me. I really want to emphasize that I'm not coming at this as somebody who's all enlightened and on the right page.
Right.
As easy as it is for me to point fingers to others. And I want, people in the Black enterprise audience obviously are people who are those kind of people you described. They're in positions where they can have a voice, they can sponsor, they can champion for other people. And certainly if they are physically disabled themselves, I'm hoping that they'll be emboldened to do as you're doing, making this in the rooms that they're in. Your father's reference to sponsorship, which is what people say about you and issues when you're not in the room, which is different.
Yep.
It's important, but sponsorship, particularly in corporate America and at the higher levels, is actually more important. What are some of the things that we need to be thinking about? I want to talk about doing. Where if we fall into one or two categories, either someone who is physically disabled but kind of has kind of accepted the status quo as this is just the way it is, and then someone like me who now is a new recruit who wants to be just as vocal a champion for diversity for physically disabled people as I am for Black people because of my legacy and history, not as a Black person, but because that's what Black enterprise is all about. What can I be doing? What should I be doing? And is it complicated? Is it the same thing I do for Black people? Just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I think it's what makes it complicated is that people try to make it, complicated. I think that when, and I am by no means the expert on any of this. I just happen to have a big mouth. There are plenty of people that I could, put you in contact with who are actually on Instagram who do a a stellar job at having these conversations. But it's really not that complicated. So we lead with humanity first. I mean, it's really that simple. So what you do and how you advocate on behalf of Black people, you do the same thing for people who have disabilities. And again, you lead with humanity first. You look at the resume, you look at the CV, you look at their qualifications. Oh man, this person has got it. Now, when they come in to interview, don't discount what they are able to do simply because of the way that they look. Like I said, I went on an interview early in my recovery when I was ready, and I sort of gotten past my own stigma of now being an amputee and what people are going to say. Went to an interview where literally the position was everything that I had been doing. Like if you looked at my resume and looked at the job description, in fact, a previous boss of mine is the one who recommended me. It's like, you need to hire this person. Went into the interview went well, never heard back from them. And went to breakfast with a friend of mine, and I was telling her about my frustration, and she just looked at me and very candidly said, well, you know why they didn't hire you. And I looked and I said, I know why, but I need to hear you say it so that I can make sure that what I felt is what it is. And she said, well, because you're in a wheelchair and you're perceived as a liability. And they're thinking about all the things that, that go along with this position outside of what's on, the job description. And it's just easier to hire somebody who doesn't have a disability than it is to hire you. And that was the first time when I just said, oh, okay, well, and I pulled myself out of the job market. Like I got discouraged. So I think the biggest thing again is lead with humanity first. If they're qualified, don't just hire somebody because they have a disability because you want to check the box. If they have the qualifications. Now, if they don't have the qualifications, if they don't have the experience, they don't have then don't hire them. I mean, you wouldn't hire somebody who was without a disability if they weren't qualified. So don't placate the system and just say,
Here's the thing about that, and I'm going to make a couple of parallels. It is a common story, especially for Black people looking for jobs in corporate America, if they don't have an obviously Black name exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If their name is Richard Johnson, and they, like you said, their resume fits perfect, everything is great, this is the perfect person, and the interviewer doesn't realize that person walks in that it's a Black person.
Mm-hmm.
What you described still happens, and historically it's always happened. Oh, what was a surefire hires turns into not quite a fit for our culture.
Right.
Not, we found there's 2 or 3 other well-qualified candidates. You're qualified. Again, you were Black for 45 years before you were physically disabled. So that's not new to us.
Mm-hmm.
To see them that you were perfect until you walked into the room,
right,
or entered the room. But the other thing that I'm going to say, and maybe you agree, you don't agree, this mythology that corporate America or people only hire qualified people.
Right. Right. Yes.
Has shown if it's the person they really want to hire, but they don't have the right credentials,
they're going to hire them anyway.
They're like, you know what? Let's bring them in or her.
And we'll train them, and we'll train them.
We'll mentor them, we'll bring them through the process. That's my classmate's son. That's my.
Mm-hmm.
So even then, I'm like, if this was a straight up meritocracy, I might buy into that. Mm-hmm. But we already know that if you make up your mind you want to hire a person, you'll figure out a way to help them succeed. And our late founder, Earl Graves Sr., our current CEO, Earl Bush Graves Jr., will say that to them. Listen, yes, maybe if she does have the perfect credentials, then what are we having this conversation about?
Right.
She doesn't, but I'm telling you that she's the right person for this position. Don't tell me, if only they had one more degree, or if only they had this particular. Then bring them in and give them that experience. And so I'm saying this to our audience.
Right.
I'm not letting you off the hook. The person may not be perfectly qualified.
Right.
But if you make up your mind, and by the way, if they are perfectly qualified and happen to be physically disabled, then you almost are doing a disservice, not almost, you're doing a disservice to the company and to that person by saying, it would be easier to hire somebody who doesn't have to use a wheelchair, despite them being qualified in every other area.
Because I think a lot of corporations, and even outside of corporations and the education arena where I primarily find myself, I think that people get nervous. They think that they're going to have to do a whole, bunch of extra stuff that they don't necessarily want to do, or it's not in the budget to do, or whatever. And I really want people not to think that way. Don't see me coming and automatically start thinking about all of the changes that need to be made. Just, hi, I'm here, let's get this job done. And I think some people are just uncomfortable. They're just it's an uncomfortability, especially if they've never known anybody that had a disability. Like I don't want to make this comparison, but it's the same way when you hear somebody say, I've never had a Black friend. I've never had a friend with a disability. And even people who are close to me are learning, because again, for 45 years, I didn't have a disability. So now they're asking, like, okay, so how do I need to do this? Or, can I help you with this? Or people are always fascinated by the fact that I drive. Like that's a big thing. Like, oh my God, she drives. And I'm like, don't you drive? Like, what's the,
right?
Because they can't figure out, well, how do you do that? You don't have legs. You don't have hand controls. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
And that's
that's the thing. So, lead with humanity. If you don't know what to do, what to say, Google is a wonderful place to go. To figure out, there are some companies and some businesses that are beginning to really take on this conversation, which I appreciate. But my hope is that that with the people who know me, for example, either whether they know me through social media or they know me in real life, that they will begin to have these conversations with companies, corporations within their own organizations, because they know me. So when the conversation, if they're at the table and the conversation broaches, that they'll see my face and say, hey, have we thought about, this? Or, hey, we need to include this because they are in relationship with me. So it's almost like, I guess I kind of want to be the ambassador. You know me. So when these conversations happen, I want you to think about, what would Chantrise need in order to do this? Or what would Chantrise say if I don't do this? Or if I don't speak up? And I think that's or what would Alfred say if I don't do this or broach this topic? So that's kind of what
important. And again, it's another reason why I was so excited to have you on the show, because I always tell people it's a myth. It's a myth that corporations lead. They follow. They're constantly looking at the marketplace, whether it's for shareholder response, marketplace response, and then they say, looks like we should be doing that. Let's do that.
Let's do that.
So if these conversations aren't happening, like you said, in organizations and families and households and communities in such a way that it bubbles up to be recognized by corporate America as a consumer sentiment, and when they say consumer sentiment, that says there's something we should be selling that we're not selling. Consumer sentiment is over here.
Right.
So in that way, yes, what you're doing in meetings, such as the meetings that I've gotten to know you in, is important, but that's almost like the tail wagging the dog. It's us having more of these conversations outside of those environments, so that eventually it becomes a thing because corporations are always looking for the next thing. And they say, oh, the next thing, so we're looking like we're cutting edge is we're going to pay attention to this. And it starts out with the window dressing, the ads, but
I was going to
eventually
say, and
to the culture of the company.
And we're seeing that from companies like Nike, Toyota. One of and I want to say it was during the Super Bowl, Toyota ran an ad of a Paralympian who was an amputee, and she was a swimmer. And they kind of, told her story. And I remember watching that, in my house, like screaming at the TV, like, yes, you get it. So there are companies that are beginning to see we need to be doing something a little bit differently, especially if they do their research. And I mentioned this in a meeting that we were in, that adults with disabilities have more buying power than Black folks and Hispanic folks combined.
Wow.
So when you think about adults, just, overarching adults with disabilities and the spending power that we have, you might want to consider, showing some representation. And you're seeing that quite a bit now with clothing companies, like name brand, like Target, Kohl's, Walmart. So you're starting, so the big box stores are beginning to get it. Like, we need to be, and even if it's not for reasons of we want to be a better corporation, even if it's just that's money that we're not getting.
Right.
That's money that we need to go after. So let's figure out how to do this. And for the most part, what I've seen, that they're beginning to do it right, but they still don't have people on their corporate boards. There's still people, they still don't have people in the C-suites. You see what I'm saying? So we need to get to the point where, Target has somebody, in that VP position, or in that director position or whatever, that can speak from a lived experience and help them navigate these waters, as opposed to thinking, well, here's what we think Black people want, or here's what we think, women want, or here's what we think people with disabilities want. Well, you can think that, and 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be wrong, because you don't have anybody to ask. Or you don't have anybody to give you the advice that you need. And it's not just, and when we think about people with disabilities, that's a wide range of folk. So even if I sit on a board and I'm able to, advocate to a certain degree, there's still a whole lot of areas that I don't know anything about. So when we're talking about hiring with people with disabilities, it needs to be a wide swath. Just again, are they qualified? Do you need their input? Do you value and respect their opinion? Because as we move forward, I forget what the number is, what the actual statistic is, but the millions of people across the world who have disabilities, that number is not going down.
Right.
It's going up. So companies are going to have to start thinking about, how do we incorporate this? How do we cast a wider net in order to make sure that we are appealing to everybody, and not just this very narrow view of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is.
In the time that we have left, I really want you to speak to those who are sharing your lived experience in one way or another. Mm-hmm. So, because you do have people like you. Again, let's say there are members of the disabled community, mm-hmm. but they want jobs, they want mm-hmm. career advancement, they want respect as consumers. They want to be able to build, not just build a nice little startup to make the ends meet because they can't get a job. They want to be able to say, no, I'd like to be the next, Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't feel like I got to put a ceiling on my ambitions, mm-hmm. Or the next Reginald F. Lewis, we've referred to, that I shouldn't feel like, well, that would be nice if I wasn't in a wheelchair. That would be mm-hmm. nice if I wasn't deaf. That would be nice if I wasn't. It should be, my ambitions shouldn't be reduced because I am disabled in some way. In the same way that we say that it should be reduced because you're Black, or it shouldn't be reduced mm-hmm. because you're a woman. What would you say during your time as through your lived experience and someone who's faced these frustrations and has been emotionally and psychologically impacted by these frustrations? This is not a small, little, easy thing.
Right.
path that you're walking. But what would you say to those in our audience who are, you know, your peers and members of your community as well, who also, especially younger people who maybe they're 20, and you know, they're looking to your example and say, okay, maybe I shouldn't lower my sights, maybe I should raise my sights. What would you
So I'm an educator. I taught ninth grade for forever, which is the best grade level to teach. Sorry, I'm biased. And one of the things that I would tell my students even before this is that you don't let anybody else define who you are, period. You know, you don't let anybody else tell you who it is that you are going to be. Society is very good at sort of trying to put people into boxes. So if you want to be the entrepreneur, if you want to write the book, if you want to be, you know, the next whatever, find a role model, find somebody who is doing what it is that you want to do and follow them, right? Figure out, research them, figure out what it is that they've done. And you might be saying, well, I don't know of anybody. Google is your friend, especially for my Gen Z, my millennials. There's a young woman who I follow. And when I became disabled, the first thing that I did was I started looking for people who had disabilities, women especially, that I could look to and say, okay, now how did they do this? And I would watch them, and they would be on social media and they would just be fabulous in their clothes and whatever. And I was just like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. It takes bravery, it takes courage, but find role models, find people who are doing what you want to do. Her name on Instagram is Lolo Love. And I don't even know how old she is. I know she's probably in her 20s, maybe early 30s, maybe. But she is on a TV show that I don't watch because I'm old, but she's on a TV show about college students. And she plays a young lady in college who has a disability in a wheelchair, and she's outstanding. And she's been out in LA for 5 years. You know, and she's one of the big voices when it comes to, you know, media and entertainment. She is tearing down walls and, you know, removing barriers and saying, hey, we are fully functioning, fully human beings. We do things, we buy shoes, we buy clothes, we have relationships, you know, we go to the grocery store. And so she is becoming the model for just include us in this too. So I would say, you know, find a role model. And if there isn't anybody who's doing what you want to do, then you do it. Then you become the role model. So I'm in working on my master's of divinity because I don't know how to stay out of school. And when I was having a conversation with my advisor, she asked me if I was considering getting ordained in our faith tradition. And I was just like, I don't know. She said, here's the reason why I need you to be ordained. She said, because I need you to be for somebody else what you have yet to see for yourself. So that's what I want to end with. Become for somebody else who you have yet to see. Because I don't know of anybody in my faith tradition who is Black and female with a physical disability who's ordained.
You just put a vision in my head. I'm the grandson of a Baptist minister, raised in the church, active in church all my life, different denominations. And you're right. I have never, ever, ever seen anybody.
Yep.
Forget about in the pulpit, just even on the the altar stand, whatever.
That's it. That's it. So become.
Right. That's huge.
Yeah. Become who you have yet to see, so that and in the back of my head, I'm thinking at some point there's going to be a young woman who's going to say, I want to be this, I want to be a model, I want to be an author, I want to be an ordained minister. And I want her to be able to Google and find me, and say, oh, well, if she did it, then I can do it. I'm a member of this lovely sorority here, and we just had our convention here in Atlanta. And as part of the marketing for that, I was part of a photo shoot where, we were sort of, wearing various outfits, and it was all over social media and all of that. And I was honored to be a part that my chapter decided to say, yeah, we want this person to be part of that. I was at convention in the vendor hall, and a woman came up to me in a wheelchair, and she tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, I just wanted to meet you. She said, because the only reason why I am at convention is because I saw you in the marketing material for convention. And she said, I wasn't going to come because I didn't know if it was going to be accessible to me. I didn't know if I would be welcome. Okay. She said, when I saw the advertisement, she said, I called my best friend. Her best friend was with her. She's like, yep, I'm the one she called. And she said, I want to go to convention because I see myself. Had I said, no, I'm not going to do this, or had I, shrunk back, she wouldn't have been able to see herself. So be the person so that other people can see what's possible. Like I said, find a role model, but if you can't find a role model, then be the role model for somebody else.
One of the best things about social media, and I know we talk about the ills of it as well as, and the evils of it, but I always tell people for the, first time, certainly for the generation after me, you can find role models all over the world. They don't have to know you exist.
Yep.
Gone are the days we had to try to get in touch with somebody.
Right.
You're right. So I totally agree with you. I think it's a perfect note to end our conversation. I do want everyone to be able to find you. We never have enough time on this show. So what's the best people to follow you, to learn more from you? Again, not just as a member of the physically disabled community, but again, established author, multiple books, speaker, coach. This is, like I said, she's qualified above the qualified of the qualified. So I just want people to be able to benefit from whatever you bring to the marketplace.
Well, I appreciate it. So the easiest way to follow me is on social media, because that's kind of where I live. On Instagram, I am at Dr. Chantrise. Real easy to find me, and I'm always posting something because I've always got something to say. On Twitter, it's the same, at Dr. Chantrise. On Facebook, it's my full name, Chantrise Holliman. It's actually my personal page, but it's public. So, and I actually took the privacy setting off because I want people to just follow my day-to-day life, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm also on Pinterest. That's my new venture, is tapping into what's going on in Pinterest, and being somebody who has a physical disability, who's also Gen X. So I tell people that I'm a Gen X resilience coach. We're a very interesting. Those of us who were born in the late 60s, early 70s, we're an interesting a group of people. So you can follow me on Pinterest at Dr. Chantrise 2. And if you want to go to my website, you can. It's www.drchantrise.com. I like to make it easy for people. You can find my books on Amazon, or you can go to my website and find them there. And I would love for you to follow me and kind of, checking on my daily shenanigans, because I always have a daily shenanigan.
As a follower on social media, and only this interview becoming familiar with your website, I will say you guys need to go check it out. It's really rich. You're rich, and
thank you.
And I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so glad.
Well, thank you for asking me. When you asked me, I was just like, really? Because I know who you are, and I've been following you for a minute. So for you to reach out and to ask, I was just like, Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna say yes. Yes. So I really do
So,
appreciate you
so,
asking and even being willing to have this conversation.
well, I'm hoping it's the first of many conversations on different platforms.
Yes.
Possibly having you back on Beyond the Hype, but I'm invested in keeping this conversation going because you really enlightened me, even as someone who's like, yes, diversity. But I was like, she's ringing this bell, and I'm paying attention. So this is good. So thank you once again for being a guest on Beyond the Hype.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and this has been another great edition, I think you'll agree, of Beyond the Hype for Black Enterprise. This episode is brought to you by JP Morgan Chase, and I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP, Executive at Large at Black Enterprise. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.